It says through lack of understanding, people believe that I, the unmanifest, have entered into some form. They fail to realize my true nature, which transcends birth and death. And I'm guessing the first part sounds like, okay, we're it's like Christianity to a T, salvation through me, this afterlife is going to be perfect. But then this other line seems to bring it back down to say Christianity's heaven is very much about birth and death, right? You're born and then you die, and that's when you can transcend. And I guess what I'm asking is it that kind of a statement where they're saying you don't people that believe that I, the unmanifest, have entered into some form? Is that the idea of saying like it's not about what you're experiencing in, let's say, this lifetime? You have to move beyond this window where we think we only exist in this window, and then we die, and then that's what happens. Is that what it's getting at? Is that how it differentiates itself?
Isn't he talking about himself here?
Yeah.
So he's saying that I am unmanifest, which means I cannot be manifested.
Right. The
But I
cause.
have come, but I'm right now talking to you in this body form.
Right.
So I am manifested at this moment, though I am unmanifest as a person who's talking to you.
Right.
So in reality, look at it this way: that if my soul, which is in my body, is actually unmanifest, but it has to be manifested when it has to come into a body form and talk to you.
Mm.
So exactly this is how he's explaining himself. That if we look at even if we look at God, God is unmanifest. He cannot be born into a body. But when
Right.
I'm coming down to give a message or talk to you, then I'm in this physical body giving this message to you. That's what he's trying to get at.
So the difference between, so we have an unmanifested God, meaning this is what we talked about at the very beginning, which is an effect with no cause. Okay, the sort of start of it all that sets it all off. And but then in the process of doing that, he's talking through a manifested state, right? So Krishna's talking to Arjuna in a state that Arjuna can see, like he's manifested himself. And so is the idea that the manifestation is just it can't is a it's incomplete, like it can't manifest itself in entirety, and so any manifestation is but a portion of the whole thing?
Why should
Or
it be incomplete? Why should it be incomplete? He's a full human form. He's just come as a human and talking to you.
yeah, but he's unmanifested, and now he's been manifested, you know what I mean?
No, unmanifest is only for the period when he is really transmitting the message that he's receiving and transmitting to Arjuna.
Hmm.
As soon as this message is over, he's as manifest human being as anyone else.
Okay.
Okay? That's see, when I told you to understand the Gita, I told you have to look at it like a two-man act.
Hmm.
Like one man is representing the humanity and talking about human problems, the other one is representing the creator and he's talking about the message that he's getting and giving it to people as a
Right.
message from the God.
Right.
So that's how it has to be understood. Does it answer you?
I think so.
All right. Is there still confusion?
There will be, but I'm not sure I've asked the right line of questioning, so I think we'll just continue. I'll figure it
All
out,
right.
or
No
it'll
worry.
come
Don't
back up
worry.
again.
If there are questions, don't worry. Ask me.
Okay.
I mean, there are some things you may not be able to all understand and apprehend at this stage, but eventually you will understand everything. So that should
That's the
not be a
goal.
problem. Things will start falling in place. You will not have problem about it.
A big sort of hurdle right now is just the language carries with it a lot of like assumed understanding, meaning they'll throw out a term and they just assume, not they, it's assumed that the reader's got some sort of context,
Yeah,
even
that's
with
correct.
like the characters in that they're talking about in the first part of the story. He's kind of laying out the
Yeah,
family dynamics and all that stuff, and from
yeah,
what I understand there's all of this back history
that's
um,
correct.
that I'm just not. privy to, and so on some level, I think it's just got to stick with it. So
That's very true. Gita is actually part of the very big book called Mahabharata.
right, I
And
remember we talked about this the first
yeah,
day.
so whole Mahabharata is a story, and Gita comes in between somewhere, or towards the end rather. So when one knows Mahabharata, then it's easy to place Gita and the characters, but till then it becomes very tough to.
Is the whole book written in a similar style? Like it's very so the Gita so far that I've read is very like poetic and almost like a song. It's got like a rhythm and a flow to it. Is the whole larger text written in a similar style, or does it change?
Um, a little bit, because Gita specifically is more into the poetic style.
Hmm.
It is called the Song of the God,
Uh,
so that's why it's called Gita. The
all right,
word
so
Geet, the word Geet means song.
I might have
So
already
in
known that.
Gita,
Maybe that's why I heard the sort of
yes,
lyrical quality to it. It's yeah, it's a. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm able to read it, so it's quite beautifully written, even through the translation.
yeah,
And so it's not a hard thing. Sit down and try to read some New Testament or the Quran or something, and it's like heavy language just to interpret. You talked about it, Shakespearean English. It's a similar struggle where it's like we don't even use pronouns like this anymore. We don't use the verb tenses that they're using, and so you're translating in your head. And so this one's been. I don't know if it's a great translation. It seemed to be, but it's it's amazing how what you had mentioned about it being poetic and lyrical can still carry through with all the translations. A lot of times you would lose that kind of thing. So
that's how it is. That's
yeah,
correct. That's correct.
great. All right, I'm done with my questions for now.
Okay. As I had told you that we believe there are three things that are permanent, three entities which are permanent. So we speak about God, we spoke about souls, we spoke about the matter. There are three things permanent. Now, when when I'm coming back, deviating a little bit, when you will see people or some books or some theories talking about the matter or the nature being a maya, it is again referred as the same way, because we cannot create it. It seems like an illusion to us. So that's
Yeah,
how it is referred to as.
well, it
But
makes sense.
it is something that we believe is permanent. Now I'll come to it with this thing, that we use a word which is called Satchidanand. Satchidanand is a word we use for God, but it has three words in it. The three words are Sat, Chit, Anand. When we combine them together, it becomes Satchidanand. The first Sat is a word that means something that has an entity, or something that exists, is a reality, is a truth. That is Sat. Chit is something that is conscious, that has a conscience, that has an awareness. Anand is the ultimate happiness, pleasure, or ultimate of everything that a person can desire. These are the three words. And then we use these three words combined together for God, which is Satchidanand. Why do we use this as Satchidanand? Is because we say the matter or the nature is Sat, because it exists. It's a reality. It has an existence. So it is Sat. But it is neither Chit nor Anand. Neither it has consciousness, nor does it have all the ultimate happiness or pleasure or divineness in it. Human beings are Sat Chit, which means we have consciousness. We are an entity, we are a reality, we have a existence, and it's got consciousness, because souls have a consciousness, but they don't have the ultimate of everything in them, which is why God is called Satchidanand, because he has all three of these. He is an entity, he has an existence, he has a conscious, and he has ultimate of everything or reality in him also. So this is why we called God Satchidanand. This also brings me to the fact that while we call the matter as only Sat, we also differentiate with two words. One of them is called Jad, other is Chetan. Jad, the word Jad means something that is uh, insentient. Insentient is absence of consciousness.
Hmm.
It is also something that is incapable of self initiating any activity.
Right.
That is called Jad. So, that is what we call the nature or the matter in its reality. Whereas human beings are Chetan or conscience, and so is the creator or the God. Now, unless there is a force or a power that is used by a conscious factor on a matter or nature, it does not move or nothing happens to it. So, this is why we say that it is incapable of self initiated activity, if that makes sense to you.
Hmm.
So, this is how we differentiate in the three when we talk about the three of them. This is the basic principles to understand anything else that is going to be spoken about in future or you read in future. But this is what you keep in mind when you read the things, that this is how it is to be differentiated.
Right. So that's how
Now,
we're different from nature and how God is different than us. That's the three levels defined.
that's true. That's
Right.
true.
Okay.
The three different entities, how do we understand them? But they're all reality, they're all there, they're always there.
Right.
That's how we understand it. And also there, we believe that this nature, we use a word called Ashtadha. Ashtadha means it beholds or it has eight characteristics in it. Eight. Asht is eight, dha is dharan or beholding or to hold it. So, or something that is there with you. So we call it Ashtadha. We call the nature Ashtada because these are the eight things that are manifested in a nature or in matter that we understand the moment it starts coming into being. Those eight things are space or ether, vayu or wind, air or wind, fire or heat or radioactivity or any energy, water or any vapor or any liquid, anything that becomes a liquid, and finally solids or what we call the earth. These five things are there, and the other three things are mind, intellect, and ego. Now I'm going to tell you about ego. So, mind, intellect, and ego. These eight things are there in the nature, the very start when it starts to becoming a reality or the creation starts to happen. These eight things are there in it, or these eight things are created in it. Someday, if I talk in detail about what we believe as a creation process, I will also explain to you how these eight things are created. I can explain them to you also when I can tell you about how creation is made. Now, when I talk about these eight things, the ego here, that means that the creation has a mind of its own, the creation has an intellect system of its own, and the creation has an ego system of its own. The ego here is not a pride. The ego here is entity, individuality, which means that the moment in a creation there is something formed, it has an individuality.
Mm.
So if a rock is formed, you know it's a rock because it has an individuality that it's rock. And the tree is a tree because it's got an individuality. So in a creation, when individuality, though we are speaking about that state where the atoms have started to create something or make a form. When they start creating or make a form, they already have a certain individuality. That is why things start getting formed. So that is what we call as ego here. Ego is not referred to like my ego, your ego, or it's getting hurt. Things like that are not referred to. Ego here is individuality. So, so nature has these 8 things that are there. The modern science works only on these 8 things. It does not go beyond. Now, I'll tell you how and why. Because we believe that to prove something, if I need to give a statement and that statement needs to be proven, there are typically what we, according to the Hindu books, we believe that there are 3 ways to prove something. The first is physical. That means I can see something, so it is there. Or I can touch something, so it is there. Or I can listen to a sound, that means it's there, right? Or I can feel it hurts me or touches me, I feel it, or I hold it, so it is there. So, physical is number one. If you look at the modern science, I would say 60 to 70% of it works on physical evidence and physical things. The second one we believe is called anuman, or what we call as estimate, or what we call as a belief, or something that we think that it must be so as it appears to be. The example is that if we see a smoke somewhere, we believe there must be a fire.
Right.
Even if we don't see the fire, we believe it is there because that's how smoke is there.
So that's what we in philosophy what they call inductive reasoning, right? So
That correct.
okay.
That's how it is. This is what we believe that is there in doctrine reasoning. The third one we believe in is we call it shabd, or the word. That if it is a word given by somebody or something or someone, it becomes a proof that must be believed in. Why we say so? While I'll talk about the shabd to you right now, the word to you, let's say that if you're in a school and your teacher says something, you're going to believe it, that it is true. You're in a college and the professor says something, you will believe that yes, it is true. Or any teacher, any guru says something, typically you will say, yes, I believe it because it must be the truth. We go a little further to it. We say that just like we believe the word that is given to us by a teacher, parents, whoever, we also believe the word that is given to us by the rishis, or the people who understood or wrote philosophies. And then those people say that we believe the word of God, or the one that is in the Vedas. If it is in the Vedas, it's the word of God. It is a proof. We do not want to prove beyond that. So this is how we want to prove something in these 3 manners when we have to prove something that we believe in. The modern science does not go that far. Sure, you can understand something that is written and tested and tried in the test tubes or whatever, and you say it is this, it is this, it is this. While we say that if you look at the way the modern science works, you would see every 10 years, 20 years, things change,
Mhm.
or the concepts change, or the theories change. That this was
Mhm.
presented to you like this, actually, it's not that, it is this.
Right.
In the Indian philosophy, nothing has changed in the millions of years. Nothing has changed. That is only because we back it with the Vedas. That if we prove this or we understand this, does it get the stamp of the Vedas or the word of the God? If it does, we do not need to further prove it.
So who
That's
gets
how it
the
is.
so who I don't think there's an answer to this, but there's obviously an ability to manipulate language to some degree. So who gets to determine that that interpretation? So we're saying that something comes from the Vedas. It's ultimate truth, right? It's one of the 3 ways of proving something. How to go about differentiating between like conflicting conclusions, let's say, two people read the Vedas, one person says everything's green, the other
Yes.
person says everything's red.
Yes, you're right. It's a good question. You see, what happens is, and it's a very major issue that we face in the Hinduism's common understanding and everything else. The way to understand is this, that there are grammar books that are made out to understand the language of the Vedas. One of them is called Panini, one of them is called Yask, and the other one is called Ashtadhyayi. So there are three, four, five books made out. One talks about how the words are made, how every word is made in Sanskrit is very clearly defined and explained, that how a word should be made. You can pick up any vowel and you can pick up any consonant and you put them together, it becomes a word. But when two of them are together, there must be a meaning to it. And if they are put together, then first one, because every letter, every alphabet has a meaning. In Sanskrit, every alphabet has a meaning. And not one, it can have multiple meanings. Because it can be multiple applications can be there. So it has multiple meanings. So how do you want to combine the two together so that this should be the meaning? So there's a principle and there's a law or rule of it, that how it should be done. There's a grammar book that explains this. Another grammar book tells us that how should a sentence be formed. That this is how you should form a sentence. That there should be an adjective, there should be a verb, there should be a proverb, whatever it is, it tells you how the sentence should be formed in Sanskrit. A sentence can be as small as one or two words also, but it has to, this is the rules of how you make a sentence. If you're going to read the Yog Darshan any day, proper Yog Darshan, you will find that a sentence is as long as two written lines, but it is one sentence. But it is there, that's how they do it. So there are rules how to make a sentence, and then there are ways how to interpret and to understand. And it tells you that these are the rules to understand a word, but the understanding of a word can differ the moment you look at the whole sentence and the structure of the sentence. And then the understanding of the sentence can differ depending upon what has been told in the prior sentence and the post aftermath sentence.
Context.
So these are how the rules have been laid. I would have to tell you this, that those people who write on the Vedas are all of them have never read the rules. So what they do is they do whatever their limited understanding is, they start interpreting and then start writing in their own way, and the things go here and there and everywhere. There are few who have read the rules. However, it's very, very unfortunate that those people who study the grammar and the rules, they never study English because they are, it takes them, you see, it takes them 8 to 10 years only to study the grammar of Sanskrit,
Right.
and then it takes them so many more years to start studying further,
Right.
and then they never have written English in their lives. Also, it's a tragedy that few of them would have been reverse, let's put it the other way, that there's a professor who's a professor of physics, and then he starts getting interested in Vedas and he starts reading Vedas. So he reads the grammar, he understands everything, but then that's how he interprets the Vedic message, and how does it prove the physics theories in the Vedas. But then that man, there are limited people like that, or there are limited people who have lived that long to do these jobs.
Right.
So this is why there's a problem in really interpreting and correcting. For me, for personally myself, I was very fortunate in a way that my parents were reading these things before I was born. And my mother had a huge library, and she would really read all these things, and she would speak very well on these also. Very early in my life, and I was very fond of reading as a kid also. Used to read all the time. Now, from that time, I would say that it becomes very, I'm just fortunate to understand that this is the right translation and this is not the right translation. That's how I got it. And eventually, when I started reading, Now I'm in a stage where it doesn't take me too long to pick up a book or listen to somebody and say, you know what, this one is what I want to listen to, and I don't want to read this or listen to this. It does not take me at all anymore any time to understand that.
Hmm.
But it has taken me time to develop this and come up to a stage. So I can't say that it's easy and it's really tough, but yes, that is there. We do have people who have translated it wrong. We do have people who have translated correct. But then yes, there are people who have translated it correct, and that's how we try to reach out and explain to people.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of dilemma. I mean, so much of the language or so much of the story that I've read so far is um, metaphorical, meaning there's much more meaning behind what they're saying than just the, you know, physical imagination of the pieces, right? There's like an interpretation that's required behind it. And when you with something like that, language and word choice can be very important in terms of what you take away from it. I was wondering with these grammar books, are they like technical manuals? Is it like a very technical exercise, or is it more allegorical like the Gita?
No, no, it's technical.
Huh.
It's more technical. And I would say that the schools that teach those things in India also, it's like 3 years with one grammar book, and 3, 4 years with the next grammar book, and 5, 6 years with the next grammar book. And it takes like a person's all educational
Full-time commitment,
years.
yeah.
Yes, it's a full time commitment. You have to be studying only this. You can't be studying anything else. And those people do become very good at it. And you talk to them, they understand very well, they explain to you very well. And it's a pleasure to listen to them. But then, same problem that you see, every single, we call them mantras, right? So every single mantra that is there in the Vedas, and there are 20,439 mantras. Every single mantra has a minimum of three different meanings. Every single mantra. And I was going through one of them that somebody has written and explained 19 meanings of one mantra, and yet he has not at all touched upon the scientific aspects of the mantra. But so it depends upon how people are going to translate, how they are going to understand, and
Mhm.
how they are going to put it forth through us, and how much do we, as me as a person, also can understand,
Right.
and how much can I again explain to people.
There's a level of, I guess, what we talked about earlier, like some sort of Maya thing to it too, right? Where it's like I'm incapable, there is going to be some distortion that I bring to it as it comes into me. I'm going to sort of use my map on my own experiences and things like this, you know, my own cultural reference points. I'm sure when I read something, I have a different set of comparators in my head than you would, just because our upbringings are so different. I'm relating it to different things.
That's very true. Also, because I'm able to read, see, I prefer reading everything in Hindi only
Yeah.
because it's the closest to Sanskrit. So I prefer reading everything. I understand because I read in Hindi. If I was not going to read in Hindi and I was reading in English from the beginning, it though my medium of education was English all my life, it would become very difficult for me to understand the Sanskrit translations even more.
Right.
So it becomes easier to understand in Hindi than any other language. But then again, it's the same thing. My understanding is going to be as per my limitations.
Right.
So that's applicable to every human being.
Right.
So what I always do is this, that when I read something and when I'm trying to understand, I always apply it to the basic principles of the Hinduism. If I apply to the basic principles of Hinduism and see that it's written is matching or it's coming up to that test, I will read further and accept it. That okay, this is something I should think about. If it does not match, then I don't take it. I don't accept it. So that's where I leave it off and I say I'm not interested. So that's how I take it. Because I put it to a test and I try it this way, and that's why I do it. This is why when I start talking about the basics of Hinduism all the time.
Hmm.
If you understand the basics, it becomes easy to understand anything you read further. See, if you are applying the basics as I have spoken in the last two talks or three talks, you will find it's easy to understand Gita more than what it was before you knew the basics of the
Hmm.
Hinduism.
Right.
Because that's how we all need to understand things. That's what I always try to do. When I told you that these eight things or eight gunas or these eight things are there in the nature when it starts getting created, it becomes very easy to understand that these eight things are what we call as physical evidence because we know they are there. And even we know they are there, that is what the eight things in the modern science are that it works on. Experiments, tries to understand, everything is there.
Hmm.
If there is medicine for mental illness or if there's medicine for emotional disturbances, it's all because these are the eight things that we work on. It's in the nature. Nature has its mind, its intellect, and its ego. So this is where we are working on. And of course, we are working all the time on space and air and earth and all these things all the time. So that's where the modern science is. Where the modern science does not go beyond are the two more things that are there in the creation, for which the entire creation system is there. The two things are the soul or the human soul or the living being soul and the God or the creator. This is where the modern science does not go. It does not touch that or it does not go beyond because these two things are not something of physical evidence,
Unmeasurable.
none unmeasurable. Yet in Hinduism, we work on these and we believe they are there and we talk about it all the time. And we also talk about the nature of it and how it is and everything else.
Hmm.
So that becomes the difference in what ours, and that this is again the same thing as I told you, that our concepts have not changed for millions of years
Hmm.
because we verify and check it out with what is written in the Vedas. And if it is there, yes, it is there. There's a very popular, what we should we call it, hymn or something that people sing as prayers. Many of them sing as prayers. And many a times people who sing this don't even know the words or understand the real meaning of what they are singing. But
Oh,
they are very popular. It's there. In Hinduism, it's all the time there. So there are people who are singing it all the time, and they some of them even recite it every morning if they need to. It's
hmm.
called the Hanuman Chalisa.
Okay.
Now, Hanuman Chalisa is something that is made of 40 lines, 40 sentences. But they read it out very quickly, cut, 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 like that, and they'll finish it off because it's to be done as a ritual every morning.
Right.
They don't understand it. In one of the lines in that Hanuman Chalisa, it gives you the exact measurement between the earth and the sun, the exact measurement. But the thing is this that we know the it's hymns to sing it every day, yet we
Right.
don't analyze and understand it. So this is the problem of application, why we don't do it. But it is there. It is there in everywhere, in our prayers, in everywhere. We have everything that is scientific. Anything that does not support is not supported by science or logic is not there in Hinduism. Discard it, throw it away. It's not there.
Hmm.
So that's how we believe the concepts are. I was talking about to you about the eight things that are there in the nature, and to make the creation there are two more things that are implanted into it, are souls and God.
Hmm.
So when you have these 10 things, creation starts becoming or being made. And that's what we follow or we believe in. I had also told you, I was looking into it. I had also told you that there is the age of this creation is 4,320,000,000 years. I told this figure to you.
Yes, I remember.
It is written in the Atharva Veda, one of the Vedas, Atharva Veda. It in Sanskrit it says take two and put three in front of it and then four in front of it, and it should be followed by seven zeros. That is the age of the creation. That's what it says in the Vedas. So we take it from there and then we start the calculations and trying to understand how we should understand it. Now, why 4,320,000,000 years? That is because that is the period or that is the time it takes Let me read it to you because I tried to put it in English to make understanding, make myself understanding. That is the time it takes for one. You see, we have a solar system. Everything, everything in the creation works when it starts to rotate. Everything rotates.
Hmm.
We know that the earth rotates on its axis. We know that the moon rotates on its axis. We also know that the moon rotates around the earth. We also know that the sun rotates on its axis. And we know that the earth rotates around the sun.
And electrons rotate around the nucleus.
Everything. Everything works when the rotation starts.
Right.
Everything works just when the rotation starts. Similarly, when the entire Milky Way, our galaxy, it
Hmm.
a Milky Way includes multiple galaxies.
Right.
And once if our Milky Way takes a whole circle of the entire galactic system, that takes the time of 4,320 years, million years. That's how it is calculated. That this is the time it takes for our Milky Way to take a one full circle around the galactic system.
Right.
Now, when I told you that we divide this 404,32,0000 by 14 parts, that is because that the we I use the word manvantar. We call them manvantars, 14 manvantars. That is the time it takes for our solar system to rotate around the Milky Way. So our solar system rotates around the Milky Way 14 times during all of this 4,320,000,000 years. This is how our calculations are made. And when we divide it into 14 times, we know that at this position, or when the system is at this position, this is how strong the sun is, or this is how weak the sun will become. And that is how the gases are going to be, or this is how the whole electron, proton, neutron is going to work. Because everything is totally balanced and depends upon the other things, like sun depends upon other sources. Well, earth depends upon sun and the moon depends upon, like that. That's how we calculate the whole thing. And that's how we come to the understanding that it's only in the seventh such period that there is human life possible on the earth. And then we calculate that the human life, when you divide it, we know that these are the number of years the human life is going to be on this earth. It will follow on, or it will go into the eighth part also, the eighth portion of these divide, but then it will be on the tail end of the human life. It will be
Hmm.
finishing at that time because the support system will be gone, or the sun will become cold and we will not be able to take it. And so it starts going to happen. Though for us human beings, you could say, oh, it's going to go on for 8,000 or 10,000 years.
Right.
Because in the whole system, where look at look at it as 4,320,000,000 years, these 1,000 or 2,000 years make no sense to it.
Right.
So that's how we calculate the whole thing that is going to be there.
So, question about that. So, we're in the seventh one. We get to the 14th. Does it just start back at one again?
When it finishes at 14,
Hmm.
it stays the destruction, and the final destruction where it needs to be recreated takes the same period of time. So 4,320,000,000 years, it is going to be totally nothing,
The whole thing goes.
complete nothing. And then after that, it will start once again. The same period, 4,320,000,000, will start again, and this creation will start one more time. So the whole cycle of it, you can say, is going to be 8 billion 640,000,000 years.
And throughout that, so everything's gone. God stays the same, continuous, or we're starting fresh.
Sorry?
So, so we get to the end of the 14. There's this period where everything goes away. We're now going to start right back up. The whole process starts again. is it the same Om or is it a new Om?
Well, there is always some creation getting made and getting destroyed in the whole galactic system.
Oh, so the 14 is just our Milky Way,
No, every Milky Way has its 14.
right?
Everything is made the same way as this one is being made.
Right,
We might find somebody who has a different length of arms or a shorter leg or something,
right,
but whole of the system, it is exactly replicated the same way every time.
right. So it's our whatever the thing is beyond galaxy is that's got goes through 14 stages, but not the entirety of everything.
No, that's right. That's
Okay,
correct. So this galaxy goes through that 14 stages. But the
right,
other galaxy in the Milky Way will going through its own 14 stages.
right, right.
And the one that is not in this Milky Way, but is some other one Milky Way is also going through its own 14 stages.
And is it always
Everything.
14
There's
or is it?
always the same calculation. Everything has always the same calculation. This is how we believe the whole system works. And we take it from the Vedas, but there are many things in this today that the modern science has started accepting. They've started accepting the age that the human life has been or will be. They've also started accepting the age that the vegetation has been on this planet. So those things have started matching up, and they're talking exactly the same figures now. This is this is the way we understand our sciences, and this is how we come to it. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about, which I did not put in to date for my notes, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about the temples. Um, have you ever been to India?
No.
Okay. But you probably have seen some pictures and photographs and other things.
Yeah.
You look at typical the Indian temples or Hindu temples, and I would have to come to it that it's better to look at them in the southern Indian peninsula, in the area of South India. Because in the northern India, most of the temples have gotten broken or destroyed
Religious
by the
conflict, right?
rulers who were not Hindus.
Yeah.
But in southern India, they have been able to maintain it. If you look at those temples, temple in our concept, sure, it was a place for worship. That is 100% sure. But the temple was like a community center,
Hmm.
always. So what happened is this, that while the temple used to have its own school, it would have its own college and university, it would have its own, I would say, governance and ministers and people who would rule it and everything else. It would have its own police, its own army, it would have everything that was required for the community to take care of it. Typically, that is how the temples were. They were not only a place of worship, they were everything that was needed in the society. Typically in India, you would see that they were smaller, let's call them towns, like one town, two towns, that they were smaller towns and they were all self ruled towns.
Right.
And all of them had a temple that was the main part of it. Now, this was the activity of a temple. It was not the only thing. And there was no one guy who was the chief of the temple. It would have multiple people it would be like a board, and the board was also elected by the people, and that's how they were done. We've we've had the system of democracy right from thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and
Yeah.
this is how the system maintained. Even the kings were elected.
Hmm.
So even the kings, or if the king was placed, let's say there was a situation where a king died and his son becomes a king, he had to go through a public election to sit on that seat. Otherwise he would not be a king. So even a king was elected, and then there was duties laid out, and so this was the role of a temple in a typical Indian society, if we go back a few thousand years. Now, while this was there, also understand the temples are built in a way, they are always built in a pyramidical shape, from the top being the thin and the thing follows in the bottom. But if you are ever going to visit any temples in India, especially in South India, you will feel this. Go to a temple and you will find there's places that you can sit. There's a hall or whatever it is that made out that you can sit here. While they will all have a deity that they want to pray or they want to call it by whatever name and they want to do it, but there will be a hall that you can sit there and you can relax. Those are places where if you sit, you will inevitably receive uh, signals or whatever you want to call it all the time, that you will think that I'm in a different world or I'm able to meditate much better. I will use a typical example of a place in South India. On the tip of South India, there's a small little island which is about, I don't know how many kilometers away from the mainland. And it is, everybody goes by a boat or a steamer or whatever you get to go there. It is built on a specific rock, and there's a temple made out and hall and everything else made out. Now, that place has a place where you go in and you sit, and it takes you not even 1 minute to get into meditative forms. I don't know what the magic is. Whether it is the three types of seas that are all around or whatever is the magic, I do not know. But it is there, and I have experienced it myself. But there are places like that. Similarly, most of the temples, if you go and sit in, there were places where you could sit and meditate, or you could sit and do your studies, or even go into the next level of your thought process when you were concentrating on one subject and you wanted to know more about it. So that was the purpose of the temples. That this is how it is supposed to be created.
Hmm.
You may or you may not perform the rituals every day, or you may not do it. Why people perform the rituals was a different reason. The reason is this, that if you begin your day, when you take a shower, when you're ready to start your day, and you perform the rituals and think about the goods or take the name of the Lord or God, the rest of the day at least you will follow it being a nice human being.
Right.
That was the concept. That you will follow these rules, that you are going to, when you say in the prayer, you say the good things about it, that I'm going to be a good man, please bless me with this, please bless me with that. At least you will follow that out when you follow the day. So you'll be in the society, you'll be a positive contributor. This was the concept when people started doing the prayers in the morning. Of course, there are other things in the prayers also, but rituals, but that was the basics of it. So this is how the temples in the Hindu concept have been there, and that's how it was followed. Typically, these towns that were there, the small towns, so many small towns, they all of them respected each other's integrity. Very rarely would you have heard the stories that one attacked the other, or they attacked the third one, or they want to take over, or they want to rob it or loot it. You will not hear this. You will never hear a story that India attacked this country and wants to take it over or something like that. We never did it. We don't believe in doing it. So this was the concept that comes from the temples. This is how the whole society grew. But the belief system in all the temples and all the society was the same. They all ascribed to the same Hindu philosophies, the same Hindu Vedas, the same systems. You might say that when they had deities in the temples, mine is different from yours and yours is different from his. My prayers are different from your prayers. Ultimate will be the same. They will all ascribe to the same. This is how the society, or the Hinduism society, or the concept of Hinduism, this is how it is developed. That is how it comes forth. While I'm telling you all these things, you should understand that there was never ever anything that was binding upon anybody. Never. If I never want to go to the temple, it makes no difference. The only binding thing were the laws, and the laws of the society and the laws of the nature, because they become naturally binding to you. That is the only binding thing. If I don't want to say my prayers every day, nobody tells me you must. If I don't believe in the books that have been written out, it's okay. Do what you want to do. So there had never been something that has been binding upon anybody. It's a very free sort of religion and society.
Hmm.
And that's how we have been developed. Because as long as you follow the laws of the nature or the laws of the creator, you will do everything good. So this is the basics that of Hinduism has been. And that's how we understand our religion when we talk about Hinduism. Certainly, it's not a, this is why we call it a way of life. Because it does not really mean that it's something that you have to follow as a religion, because it's not.
Mhm.
It's not.
It
It's
allows
more
it
of,
to be it allows it
yes,
to be much more flexible, right? It can
yeah,
move and adjust with the times.
it's very flexible.
Hmm.
It's very flexible. That is why there is a word you would listen to which is called Sanatan. The word Sanatan means something that is everlasting and it never dies. So that's why people use the word Sanatan when they say Sanatan Hindu Dharma and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And that's why we use the word Sanatan, because it has never changed. It does not need to change. It does not need to alter.
So what you were talking about with the temples and how they work, do they still work that way? And do they work that way in places other than southern India or just in southern India?
Um, very few of them still work like that. Very few of them. But then they would not have their own governance. They would not have their own police, because it's all now one country, and the
Hmm.
country has to have its own police and army and everything. And the
Hmm.
government is one. So that part is gone. And some of them, quite few of them, still have their own schools. Quite few of them still have their own schools. And some of them even have their own colleges and universities. And many of them have the thing where people do go there for everything on their lives, events, needs, whatever it is, they do go and refer. And quite a few of them have the boards. So the elected boards. So some of them, yes, in some parts, yes, and most of them, I would say, some of them not even works like that.
Hmm.
Some of them have just become a place of worship where people go when they need to and do their prayers and come back. So it's all the everything is there now.
It very closely resembles like a modern political movement called social democracy or democratic socialism, where you have the democratic aspect of people electing people, right? Like there is an acknowledgement here that you're not nobody's going to be perfect, or we're not looking to anoint a deity, right? Like a lot of times it becomes leaders become too close to being worshipped, right? So you have this idea of democracy, which allows the people to sort of for things to come from the people as opposed to being told to them. But then you're also getting this aspect of like social contribution, which is a wonderful thing. So it's like this place serves the needs of all the humans around, not just spiritually, but like it gives you some education, it gives you a place to go. It's like a community, a place where people come together. Like there's a huge aspect of that I think I might be misunderstanding the purpose behind it, but there's a huge benefit to coming together communally. Like it's something that I feel like we don't do very much anymore, particularly in our society. And it makes people, spiritually sick, I'd say. It's like you need that connection to people on this deeper level, and not having a place where people gather to, like you said, even just sit and contemplate, but be around other people that are contemplating similar things or seeking out something similar is a wonderful experience and quite helpful.
It's the same. You see, when you call yourself one of, we are all one nation. We are all Canadians.
Mhm.
So when you call yourself as one nation, it's the same thing, because we ascribe to the same common things and common feelings, and whatever it is common.
Right.
Well, the democracy allows you to be a Christian or to be a Hindu or to be somebody, a Muslim or whatever. It allows you, but we are still Canadians.
Hmm.
So it's the same concept that has been taken into it. And you could say that they were those small little societies, and they were all independent, and
Hmm.
yet they were all on the common ground, because they were all of the common things. Even we have evidence of towns that had their own identity papers also, that every human being had. So if I wanted to travel from that one particular temple town to the other for a better education or trade or business, I would just have to show that identity paper and I could go and do business in every one of them.
They're like
So
city
it was
states.
it was the same thing. Same like we have, if I show my document, I go to US. And then from US I want to go to some other country, I just show my passport and I go. So it was same concept has been there. And we've had this concept for thousands and thousands of years. But idea is that there has to be a homogenized sort of a feeling that I belong to one particular country.
Hmm.
So that belonging of one particular country was I belong to this particular part of, expanded to a town or a bigger town or whatever you want to call it.
Well, it seems like where we started was small, and is the boundaries of what we consider our in-group been growing,
Correct.
right?
That's correct. Now, because of this societal structure, next time in my next talk, remind me because it's already 11 past now. In my next talk, I will talk about the what we call it as Varna Vyavastha, Varna. There's one word called Varna Vyavastha, and the Western world imposes upon it as a caste system.
Yeah, I'm
If you
interested to hear about that.
if you have heard about what we call it as caste system, there is no word like caste in India. It's a Spanish word and it has been imposed upon us by the Britishers.
Hmm.
But what is actually the system in India, and we call it the Varna Vyavastha, I will explain to you in my next talk. That divides the society in a manner that it should have been, though it has totally been distorted today. But
So let me ask you one quick question. I know we're not going to go into the whole thing, but just because I'll be thinking about it. The Western sort of take on or interpretation or explanation of the caste system is much similar. Is basically like a class system, where you have designated certain classes within society based on your history, and it's somewhat discriminative, right? That's the sort of negative take on it, right?
yes, it is.
Is that so is the misinterpretation simply a Western misinterpretation, or is in your mind it's also misinterpreted in India where it's been in practice?
It has been imposed and forced upon. The misinterpretation has been imposed and forced upon
Internally or just from external forces? Like
from
is
external forces.
so India doesn't practice the wrong interpretations.
Now it does.
It does now, I see.
Now it does. Most of it does.
So it was sort of put upon you, but that being put upon infiltrated the society, and that's the
That's
way
correct.
I got it. Okay.
That's correct. But what it really is what I'm going to explain to you next time, and
I
I'll
can't
talk
wait.
about it.
I can't wait.
All right. So we meet next Friday.
Wonderful.
Right on. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.